Hello, welcome to the Men Are Human weekly voice chat. You can see we have a special guest, Fred Hayward, recognizable from the Red Pill documentary, Cassie J. I am Blue Orange 22. Today we're going to be talking mostly about family courts and divorce courts, and how there's starting to be some pushback and starting to be some recognition about how men's rights activists are bringing up how men are so often treated unfairly in family courts. But there's some smear tactics going on. And as usual, critics of the men's rights movement are basically lying about us and lying about the situation. I also want to mention this story. I'm going to put it in the voice discussion now. This is a case of domestic violence and a male victim. If you go to the voice chat, I just posted the link. Look at that picture. Look at how much blood is coming out of his face. How much jail time do you think the woman who did that with a knife received? 0. She got 20 months suspended sentence. And suspended sentence in the UK basically means you don't have to go to prison. So she almost killed him. Read the article. She stabbed him in the head. No jail time. And I mentioned both of these topics, actually, family courts and domestic violence against men on Bausch's debate. So we're just kind of revisiting, I suppose, two very common topics in the men's rights movement. But Fred, would you like to give an introduction?
An introduction to
of yourself? Yeah, whatever you want.
Let's see. I was always interested in men's issues. I hear other voices. Anyway,
Hold on a second. Hold a second. Mel King, could you mute yourself? Hel King, if you could keep your mic muted when other people are talking, that would be great. Thank you. Okay, sorry, Fred, please carry on.
All right. I'll kind of skip some. I went to a national conference on men and masculinity in 1976, and it had the people who you would be having a podcast now if you were talking about men's issues back then. It was the top people in the country, maybe the world, and I was talking to them about all the things that I was concerned about with men's issues, and they kept saying, I never thought of that before. And I was thinking, if you're the top people and you haven't thought about this, somebody needs to start talking about it. And I felt that the problems were serious. I felt that feminism was creating more anger and resentment, and as it was creating as many sexist stereotypes as it was eliminating. It was just making the problem worse. And that we were never, I really believed in the goals of feminism, of equality, but I knew that feminism was never going to reach those goals. And I decided I wanted to work in the men's movement, and there wasn't any. So I realized I need to create a men's movement. And it took a year to arrange being laid off from my job. And so in 1977, I was free to start the men's movement, the anti-sexist men's movement. And I formed a nonprofit corporation, Men's Rights Incorporated. And I really had no game plan. I was just doing what I just thought made sense. I had kind of a knack for media. And so I started doing some activist things that I knew would get media attention. And I'll get to that in a second. But I formed Men's Rights Incorporated. As I said, it's a nonprofit corporation. And I thought that I did it in order to qualify for grants. It turns out I didn't get any grant money because the grants are controlled by feminists. Even in the Playboy Foundation, they had specific rules, guidelines that they would only fund women's issues, the Playboy Foundation. So I didn't get any funding, but I did have suddenly executive director of a corporation after my name, and that added to my credibility. And I decided to teach a course because I needed research done And I felt I can't do all the research. So I thought if I teach a university level course, I taught at Tufts University, the first course on men's issues. And I did it really just to assign research to all my students, figuring I'll get, 30 free researchers. And the research, was helpful. But the biggest help was that now I was a visiting lecturer at Tufts University, and that added to my credibility. So I was kind of making the right decisions for the wrong reasons. And then I started, the first thing I did was I got ladies' nights banned. And for those of you in other countries, if you're not sure what that is, it's they're free drinks or free free admittance to bars and just all kinds of offers for women to draw women into bars. And men like it because it draws women in. So we end up paying and subsidizing drinks for all these women who are going to reject us anyway, unless they get drunk enough. But I guess you need to know my sense of humor. I cracked. So a lot of this is not serious. But anyway, I met before the Massachusetts Commission on Discrimination. And they really, when they saw the topic on the agenda, ladies' nights, they didn't take it seriously. But I said to them, suppose there was a bar in the inner city that it was in a black neighborhood and they wanted to make it a little more upscale and draw white people in from the suburbs. So suppose they started to have White Wednesdays and whites would get free drinks on Wednesdays. Would that be okay with you? And they said, immediately it just clicked. They said, no, obviously, it violates the law on discrimination in a place of public accommodation. I said, well, yeah, but that law outlaws discrimination in a place of public accommodation, not just on race and not just religion and national identity, but sex. So it's the same law. Why can't you apply it now? And they did. So the Boston Globe had this large feature on me, the man who banned ladies' nights, and some talk show producers read the article and thought, well, this will be funny, let's get him on our show. And they would put me on for like maybe the last 5 minutes of a show thinking I was going to be funny. And then they'd go, wow, this is really interesting, because what I did was I said, all right, ladies' nights, isn't really that important, but the role of initiating relationships, which is what this is based on, this being a male role, is very important. And I started going through how this affects the male personality, the female personality, the relationships, all the negative ways that dumping this role of rejection on men, this risk of rejection, putting it all on men, all the negative ways that it affects people. And so it started, some reporter would see that show and say, this guy's interesting. I think I'll write an article about it. And they would write an article, and another producer would read the article and say, this guy's interesting. Let's get him on my show. And pretty soon I was doing about 100 radio and TV talk shows a year. And that kind of kick-started the whole thing.
Cool. Now, Ma, you were showing me earlier, I forget who it was, that article about they're now saying, they're now telling women to stop using abuse in domestic courts, and they were blaming MRAs and saying that we were being dishonest. Do you want to explain what that was about?
Well, the specific wording they're using is male supremacists, but if you decode it all, what it actually boils down to is false accusations in the family court have been going on so long that they're now called the silver bullet by a lot of people, because you accuse the man of abusing the kids, and then basically, you get everything, is as far as I've been able to tell. And the general sort of you'd think there'd be some sort of checks and balances here, and even though we've got the battered woman syndrome sort of thing, and we've got the what's that other one called? The one where they give you the children instantly because you're female. I can't remember the name of it, but they've got that law that, that old premise that the woman should get the children anyway and stuff like that. And it's all weighted onto the one side. But our side has managed to at least make some sort of dent to the point that courts are now realizing that false accusations are a thing, and lawyers are now telling their clients to be very, very careful of these accusations that they make, because it can then be used that they can counterclaim what's the word, parental alienation and things like that. At least that's what I've been seeing from the article and from people tweeting about it. If you've seen the article, it's very, very, you have to read between the lines a lot, but that's a general impression I'm getting.
So, in other words, they're using the label male supremacists because those men want equal treatment in court. Thus, they're labeled male supremacists because they're against false accusations. They're not saying that abuse isn't a valid point. They're saying that false accusations are a problem, and because of that, they're being labeled male supremacists.
Basically, from what I gather, it's a case of the pendulum swinging back the other way, and they're now saying that abusers are misusing. This is their classic tactic, by the way. Is they did this with India and Israel with men being included in rape laws. They are basically saying that the men are being able to misuse the system to basically attack the woman and claim that she's like lying about the abuse, and then they say that the children immediately go to the abuser. But what's really happening is system in chaos, I think. Sorry, what?
Vaush tried that. Vaush made that same argument when we were debating permanent alimony in Florida. He was saying how feminist groups were objecting to the assumed 50-50 custody, that the new position was going to be the default setting in a divorce was 50-50 custody, and feminists were against that because it would mean that an abusive father hypothetically would get the child 50% of the time. But this ignores two things. First of all, wouldn't you have the same problem with an abusive mother? If the assumption is to give the custody to the mother, what if it's the mother who's abusive? The second thing is the 50-50 supposition wasn't mandatory. It was just the default position. It means that at the beginning, when everything is equal, before the facts come out, before any aggregating factors are considered, the assumed default is 50-50. So basically it means the judge is going to start off, preferring 50-50 custody. And then if they hear cases in the fact, if they hear facts in the case, like the father was abusive, then obviously judge wouldn't have to give 50-50 custody. If one of the parents is abusive, you don't have to give them custody. Just the starting preferred position is 50-50. And then Vaush was saying, oh, so you think it should be preferred? Well, yeah, I think that should be, in an ideal situation, it should be 50-50. And then if facts of the case come out and that one parent is abusive, no, we don't have to be 50-50. It doesn't mandate it in law. It just makes it the starting default position. I think that's kind of similar to what's going on here.
They've been doing that for a long time, really. Kind of perverting what the 50-50 is by raising the abuse issue, even though it's always said that that you'd be guaranteed 50-50 unless you were proven abusive or unless you were proven incompetent or unless you didn't want it, that it wasn't just an automatic thing. But they've been saying that for a long time, and it's even the term silver bullet, goes back decades and decades, because they've been using it a long time. And I think domestic violence is really like the basic, it's the ultimate thing that feminists use, that fear that men are abusing women is what they do. I don't know if you remember a movie with Robin Williams, Mrs. Doubtfire. This was decades ago, and there was something in the California legislation, the Doubtfire bill, that would not grant equal custody, but simply say that if the mother had custody and the father was capable, a good parent and willing to take care of the child while the mother was at work, that he would get preference over, not over the mother, but over a total stranger. So in other words, if there was daycare, instead of him having to pay some other stranger woman always to take care of his own child when he was available, that he'd be able to do this. And it just made so much sense that it was called the Doubtfire bill, because that was the plot of the movie, where Robin Williams was a divorced father and he wanted to take care of his own child, and they wouldn't let him do it. So he dressed up as a woman, and Mrs. Doubtfire became his name, and he took care of his own kids dressed as a woman. So the Doubtfire bill was passed unanimously in all the committees. And then when the feminists found out that this was going, then they started saying, well, no, men just want to use this to abuse the mother and to abuse the child, when that wasn't the legislation, said if he's not abusive, it's just if he's a good parent, then he's available. He should be able to take care of his own child rather than a stranger doing it. But they use that fear of domestic violence to scuttle the bill, and all of a sudden everybody was against it. And they've been using that. So I think domestic violence, especially since the research for 45 years now, the scientific research, thousands of studies have consistently found that women initiate abuse as often as men. Consistently finding that in all demographic subgroups, and in young dating people, in married people, single people, urban people, rural people, old people, young people, black people, white people, even gay people, heterosexual people, that the rate of domestic violence and lesbian relationships is equal. So this research is there, and they're trying to squelch the research. But if we can get people to see that women are just as violent as men within relationships, then this is like the main weapon that feminists use to oppose joint custody.
Yeah, it's. Have you ever heard of the way that they basically train lawyers to lodge false accusations in family court? Because we've got a video of some of them actually doing it, and I can't remember the exact details of how it's done, but basically it amounts to: send us a false accusation, we'll ignore it, and the courts will then have to basically act as if it were true or something to that effect. And then by the time it gets cleared up, it will be way too late, and the custody decision will already have been made.
Yeah, it's been going on for a long time. Attorneys advising women to launch false accusations. So I'm glad if they're starting to warn that. I think one of the big changes is all the video that's out there now. Everybody has a phone and everybody has a camera, and I think that's helping a lot of men, who are being falsely accused, that all of a sudden then they could produce video or text threads and things that prove their innocence, which we didn't used to have before. So, and I think video is really powerful. The videos on YouTube where actors pretend to be abusive, and they show the public reaction to a woman abusing a man, and a man abusing a woman. And when the man abuses a woman, people interfere, and they protect her. But when a woman abuses a man, people walk by, they laugh, they cheer for her. So I think video is a really powerful medium, and
There's
we
one.
can use that now.
There's one of those such videos where there was a woman. Not only did she laugh when she saw it, but she kind of like this motion, like it was a joke. And when she was interviewed, she was still laughing. And then they asked her, "Well, why did you laugh?" And she said, "Oh, well, I thought that he must have deserved it. He probably cheated or something." Laughing away. That was the fun. She actually saw him being hit. She not only not thought it was wrong, she celebrated it.
Yeah.
Which just goes to show you how does she feel about doing it in her relationship? How does she raise her kids to see doing that? How does she raise her daughter to see doing that? How does she raise her son to see doing that? By the way, we have someone wants to ask you a question.
Okay.
This is by far the biggest chat we've ever had, so it's going to be a little chaotic to organize everyone's voice getting in. But Pax said he wanted to ask you a question. Pax, feel free to.
I mean, like you mentioned, Equalist, like the research on domestic violence, man and women, and you said that, it's about equal, initiation of domestic violence. Like, but are there like areas where women are like certain kinds of domestic abuse where women are more prone to that, or vice versa with men, or like does the research go into specifics basically?
Mm-hmm. What's interesting is that most of the researchers are feminist, and they began by really not wanting to find what they found and pretending that they didn't find it. And then it just started to accumulate so much that more and more of them are being honest, but it's feminist researchers. So we haven't really started to look into the kinds of abuse that women are even more likely to do, such as emotional abuse. We know that if you exercise power over someone, that you're more likely to be the abuser than the abusee. And we know that women have this emotional power over men. We know that surveys show that for the average married man, his best friend is his wife. He relies on her. The average married woman, on the other hand, chooses some other woman as her best friend. So men are emotionally dependent on women. So you can assume that they're probably capable, especially since they're also trained more in manipulation, that emotional abuse would be even greater by women. There are other things that I think you called it proxy abuse. I called it surrogate abuse in a previous conversation. But women have the ability to get other people to abuse for them. And I spoke with a researcher who was famous because he did the largest study ever. He was part of a team, actually, that the two of them did the largest study ever of domestic violence. And that's what broke it wide open, like in 1976. And they found actually that women were slightly more abusive than men, and they did not publicize that. It was just like a little footnote somewhere. By the way, we also found equal numbers of women, but it's probably something wrong.
Can you talk more about these findings on women using other people to abuse their partners?
Yeah.
Like such research exists. Like, where can I find it?
Well, that's what I'm talking about. That I spoke with him. So he was the top person at the time. Once he started to address female abuse, he no longer became the top person. Feminists started to ruin his funding and so on. But I spoke to him at a conference about this. I said, well, what about when you factor in abuse, when you look into the way a woman can abuse a man, what about how she can get her new boyfriend to beat him up, or her brothers to beat him up, or another group of men, or if she calls the police and makes a false allegation and they come over and they're all, protective of the woman and they beat him up. I was talking to a police officer at a party once, and he said that that's what they do, that they're worried, when they respond to a domestic violence call, that they're worried that he might not be punished enough, so they beat him up. They just keep So, like, what if she gets somebody else to do her violence for her? Does that count in your statistics? And he said, no, that would be a really interesting thing. It has not been studied, but if men can start to define some of these issues so that it includes our experience, then you're going to see even more skewed statistics. But we don't get to define things. Right now we're at the point where we're just dealing with the way women define rape, for example. If a woman pretends that she's
That's, by the way,
on,
that very thing, that very scenario, the proxy violence, that has happened to multiple members of this server, including me. It wasn't a relationship situation, but it was that exact same proxy violence thing. So I can say I have first-hand experience with that absolutely being a real thing.
yeah,
So do other people here as well.
It is a real thing.
I
It's common among cluster B women.
the number of men, men don't think in terms of abuse. I would get calls saying, she's accused me of being violent. There's never been violence in our relationship, and she's making this up. And I said, there's never been violence in your relationship? No, never. She's never hit you? Oh, well, of course, yeah, she hits me all the time, but I'm talking about me. I've never been, we don't see as men that this is violent. I remember getting the news to do a story because there was a TV movie on a battered man, and the producer, by the way, got into a lot of trouble for producing a movie on a battered man. But it was shown on, and I contacted the local station, and I said, you're going to show this movie, Thursday night. It ends at just before your local news. Wouldn't it be nice to have a group of battered men on your news, to have a little story? They say, hey, yeah, that would be great. So I recruited a group of battered men, and they called me, the TV station called me up that day. They said, we can't do the interview when you've got all these men. We're going to have to reschedule it at a certain time that none of them could make it. So I had one day to think about, oh, damn, they can't do this story. And I went to another men's meeting that had nothing to do with domestic violence or family law or anything. And I said, how many of you men have been hit by women? Everybody raised their hand. I said, you want to be on the news tonight? It's so common, like if you ask the average man, have you ever been slapped? Has a woman ever dumped a drink
Yeah,
on
by
in
my
your
mother.
face? Yeah, like it's so
As a
common.
20-year-old guy too.
It doesn't register for us, but we need it to start registering.
And
We've got
something,
a couple-
and I had this conversation with Vaush as well, and I had this debate with feminists a lot. I kind of feel like feminists are introducing all these arguments about the prevalence and the rate of violence and what gender gets seriously injured more, what gender gets murdered more. And I'm always thinking, does it really matter in how you frame a law? Can't you just write a gender neutral law and then treat both victims and perpetrators equally on an individual level? Like, regardless of the percent, why does the ratio of serious injury matter in how you treat a victim, how you treat a perpetrator? Shouldn't the crime just be the crime and the consequence just be the consequence, instead of saying, oh, well, the perpetrator was female and the victim was male, so therefore we have to treat this case in a different way? If anything, feminists say, oh, it makes it more efficient to recognize the gendered nature of domestic violence. I would say, if anything, it's the other way around. It's less efficient. Now you're just bogging down the process with irrelevant information. Instead of just treating the case as the case, instead of just saying, okay, this crime was committed, this is the penal code, and let's move on. Instead, now they want to complicate it even more, making it a gendered issue. So now police have to look at the case and go, oh, okay, the perpetrator was a woman and the man was a victim. That changes it. Now we have to react to it differently. But why? Makes no sense.
Yeah,
Feminism
is really all about preference for women. Because if there is something like this where they can at least make the claim that women are the majority of the victims, then women get all the funding. But if it's the reverse, like say some in veterans issues, where women are a much smaller percentage of whatever the veterans issue is. They demand special treatment. It's because there are so few that, and the media will do this. If they're doing a story on veterans, they'll have a woman on there as often as a man, even though she's a minority. Or heart attacks, where men are the majority of the victims, they'll have special funding for women, as opposed to saying, let's have all the funding and all the agencies dealing with men because that's the majority. They'll have special agencies dealing with women.
I've actually kind of coined a term for it. Maybe, I mean, I'm sure I wasn't the first. I call it the majority minority hypocrisy, and it's literally exactly what you just said.
Good point.
No, I mean, I think in California about 10 years ago, there was actually a lawsuit about the state law for domestic violence discriminating against men. And I actually think Mark Angelucci, I think we talked about this, you and I, before.
That was actually
this for everyone else.
Right.
The argument that he used was 95% of workplace injuries and deaths are men. It makes sense to say that a female employee doesn't deserve equal protection from workplace injury? No, of course not. Because even though it's only 5% of people, those 5% of people are still equal as individuals.
Exactly. That was actually in Sacramento, where I am based, and they were suing WEAVE, which stands for Women Escaping a Violent Environment, and it's a major multi-million-dollar shelter and program for violence against women, and they know about the violence against men because it's right here. I've interviewed them and we've talked about this. They know all this research, but they pretend they don't know it when they're talking to reporters. So WEAVE was sued, and the woman who started WEAVE is our own Erin Pizzey. For those of you in England, Erin Pizzey is the one who started the first shelter for women, battered women, immediately saw that women were just as violent as men and started to speak out about it. That if we're really concerned about domestic violence, we really want to help victims, and we really care about children also, because domestic violence against men gets dismissed as it's not that serious, but children are just as damaged when they see mom hit dad as when they see dad hit mom. And so there was a woman here in Sacramento who started WEAVE, and she saw what Erin Pizzey saw. She saw that the women were just as violent. She started to speak out about it, and just like Erin Pizzey, she was kicked out of her own shelter.
I hope they didn't shoot her dog as well, like they did with Erin Pizzey's.
I'm sorry?
Oh, Erin Pizzey said something about somebody shooting her dog.
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, women get violent when you accuse them of potentially being violent. How dare you say we're violent, Bam?
Well, I mean, if she's violent, you got to call her out on that.
Yeah.
It's very interesting the way that the media has reacted to the Johnny Depp versus Amber Heard. Well, I'd call it a scandal at this point. I don't know how many people have been keeping up on it, but basically we have video confessions of Amber Heard saying that she hit Johnny Depp. We know that Johnny Depp went to the hospital to have part of his finger reattached. She posted malicious photos of him. She slammed his head in a door and admitted it. She's basically said, oh yeah, I was extremely violent, but only because I was afraid of him, And then we have all the witnesses saying that Johnny Depp never laid a hand on her and stuff like that. But the media has basically, when it came out that Johnny Depp, she was saying that Johnny Depp was abusive, the media came down on her side like a brick house, basically. And they defended her. They called her brave and stuff like that. And then when it turned out that her bruises were slightly immobile and made of makeup, they just ignored that. And when it turned out that Johnny Depp was actually the one being abused, they just carried on the story. And they have basically just kept it up. And Johnny Depp's career is in tatters, whereas she's in Aquaman 2, Quiet Place 2, I think, and a bunch of other things. And, you know, the media's glowing about her, and she's still domestic violence spokesman for L'Oreal and so on. And I have actually noticed that an awful lot of female domestic violence spokeswomen and like people who get on these feminist committees and things are actually abusive. We've found quite a few who we you know, have news articles and things about them beating their boyfriends or husbands and things. Like I think it was Sarah Champion was one, and we also have numerous others who we suspect like Julie Bindel. Sorry, not Julie Bindel. What's her name? I can't remember. It doesn't matter. But yeah.
Are you referring to the member of parliament who not only had she been guilty of abusing her husband in the past, she was on one of the committees for women's equality, or
yeah.
What was her name again?
I think it was Sarah Champion, but it's been a while.
I think you might be right. Yeah.
Yeah, there was another one too, but I think we lost the article for it. Oh, by the way, there's a couple of questions in chat if anyone wants, if Fred wants to answer them.
Ma, why don't you read them out?
Well, sure. Captain Ghost, you had a question. Would you like to say it live, or? Okay, never mind then. Captain Ghost is asking, when we see men getting abused in public, what's the best way to intervene? Sorry, I don't have a mic. Oh, oops. I didn't realize he didn't have a mic. Sorry. Go on.
I would step right in, you know, and stop her, try to get video, but go right in. You're being abused, because a lot of time the man is just taking it. I say, you're being abused, you're being assaulted, and you should go to the police. I will back you up. Here's my name. Here's my phone number. I'm a witness. Do this. Protect yourself. That's what I would do. And I've done that in a supermarket just a couple of months ago.
Really?
How did she react? Did she follow you around?
I'm sorry?
Like, how did she react when you intervened? Like, she probably lashed out, didn't she?
It was really, you know, I'd like to say it was a happy ending. It wasn't. The security came over, and they said, you know, we're calling the police. Don't leave the place, you know, and I gave them my name and number. I said I want to be a witness. I told the victim the same thing. Security said, we're going to keep her here until the police come. And a few minutes later, I saw her with her basket filled with food just walk out of the supermarket. And so not only did she get away with abuse, but she stole all the food in her shopping cart. So it didn't end well, but at least the guy, you know, at least she stopped hitting the guy.
Like, did anyone else come forward too when you stepped forward?
Yeah, there were other people. I was certainly the most active and the most vocal, but other people were watching. Nobody stopped her. But you know, I guess I and the security people were the only one who actually stepped in, but other people were supportive of him.
I actually have a story about doing this myself. I saw this happening 9 years ago. A woman was beating on her boyfriend. I was like, hey, you know what? Stop doing that. And she kind of got in my face, and I didn't back down. I said, no, don't do that. I forget exactly what I said, but I just said something. Mm-hmm. And she left off in a huff. And the boyfriend was like, oh, thanks, man. You know, I was kind of worried she was going to start attacking you. I asked them, does this happen often? And she goes, sometimes she loses her temper. I'm like, man, you gotta leave that relationship. You know, you can't accept that. And I never saw him again, so I don't know what happened. But yeah, that's one little anecdote.
A neighbor. My
problem.
Video is
what you said about
frozen. Is there something wrong on my screen right now? My video has been frozen for a while. Is it the way it is for everybody?
I see a
can
black
see
screen
that
when
your
you talk.
video.
I'm still talking. Okay, good.
I see. I see you being
Oh,
frozen. Um,
um,
don't know if it's on our ends or your ends. I don't see any issue on our ends.
you're not frozen.
So
I'm the only one. Maybe I'll go off and come on.
That usually fixes it. Yeah.
All right. Oh,
what you said about the woman in the store, how she wasn't arrested, this is often codified or quasi-codified. With the Duluth model in the United States,
mhm.
police forces are trained to automatically not arrest a woman in a domestic incident because the presumption should be that she is either not the perpetrator or doesn't pose significant risk as a perpetrator. Of course,
Right.
last year in the UK, something else I argued with Vaush, when they tried to genderize the domestic violence law, which I suggested would be a quasi-legalization. Vaush said I was lying about that because, of course, it wasn't legalizing violence against men. But the effect would be a de facto legalization of violence against men. Because if you're gendering a law and you're training police to see a law through gendered lens by the default, the training is to not see a man as a victim and to not arrest a woman as a perpetrator. That's the logical result you would get from that law. So it's always very sneaky and insidious the way that these bills are phrased. They, of course, never spell it out directly, but it's always in a very manipulative, disingenuous way, complex language and indirect language that achieves those kinds of goals.
Yeah, and sometimes they reject that Duluth model that it's always the man, and in some jurisdictions they say the primary aggressor is the one who should be arrested. How do you measure that? Well, whoever is larger. So they end up arresting the man all the time anyway, or almost all the time. It's oh boy, another thing is just on video, they have seen women. There was a quarterback whose career was ruined, just over, because there was a video of him hitting his fiance, and his career was literally over at that point. Even though the video also showed that prior to him hitting her, she was spitting at him, cursing at him, kicking him, but it was not even taken as a factor of to modify, to ameliorate his offense at hitting her. It was given nothing at all. Nothing was said about that. And what the research shows is actually violence initiated by women is the leading factor in their own injury, because at some point the man might lose his temper and hit her back, and that's when she might get injured. So by feminists squelching this and saying, it's okay, we're not going to deal with female violence, we're only going to deal with male violence, they're actually increasing the number of women who are being injured. But clearly protecting women is not their priority. Eliminating domestic violence is not their priority, but getting funding is. It's multi-billion-dollar industry.
It's also basically
if you could send me
giving
that study, that'd be amazing.
Please.
Sorry. I was just saying, if you could send me that study, it'd be amazing.
Hello, I just wanted to. Is there any sources where we can learn more about where the funding goes to exactly? Because I found it quite difficult to. All I can really find easily is how large the budget is and roughly what the money's being spent on, but I can't find out how much funding like a local domestic violence shelter gets or how much funding a politician gets who's involved in that.
They don't want it to be easy. They don't want it to be easy to trace. So I'm sure by law they have to put it down somewhere, but I imagine they make it as difficult as possible. Yeah. At
least in the States, that's public knowledge, in their tax forms that they have to file. And there's something called charitynavigator.com, I guess, where you can look at charities and see what they have filed. And you can see, how much money they've gotten from donations, how much from government projects, things like that, government agencies. So you could check into that. There, SAVE, SAVE, I forget what it is. It's saveservice.org, I think, is their website. They have a lot of good resources. There's something called the Fiebert Bibliography, which has hundreds of studies on it. And it's either FIEBERT or FEIBERT. And I could send you stuff, if you could probably get in touch with me through Ma or through this website, I guess. And there's another guy who has documented thousands of studies. Name slips my mind right now, but I could get that to you if you want to contact me through this group.
That's brilliant. Where would I contact you through again? Sorry.
Well, I know I've been emailing with Ma, Men Are Human, and I don't know how. This is my first time on Discord, so I don't know whether I get messages or like how that works, but maybe that's it.
I can send you a DM, but I can get Men Are Human to pass the email along, and I'll do that. But
Okay.
Another question I had was, we know that a lot of us here, I think, understand the situation that male victims face relatively well. But with the police being biased in the ways they very clearly are, and all of the domestic violence services for the most part, and like my main question is, what can we as individuals, either politically or if we see domestic abuse occurring, that's female on male or bi-directional, like what can we do to try to help the situation and support them there?
I think demonstrations are really effective, if not affecting the person that or agency you're demonstrating against, but in terms of getting publicity. So, and I would look for things, if you have like the example given earlier today of this guy who's bleeding and he was stabbed in the face and she got no jail time at all. I don't know what city that's in, but you can make problems for judges who do that. If you demonstrate, if you get people to demonstrate at the courthouse on that, and you get some publicity, and then more people read that publicity and contact you, and then that's how you grow an organization. One of the things that I was concerned about was that in newspapers, the media plays down violence against men, and like they'll say there was a massacre and 20 people were killed, or a mine disaster and 30 miners died, and they'll call them people and laborers and victims and everything if they're all men. But every once in a while they'll say, some, including some women, including 3 women or whatever, and that to me, is so sexist that if you demonstrate in front of the newspaper offices that publish that and just said, we want, equal treatment. Don't make it seem like the death of a woman is more tragic than the death of a man. It's something so basic and so obvious, and there are so many people, that would say, yeah, a man's life should be worth what a woman's life is worth. But the important thing is getting publicity, because every time you get publicity, more people contact you. And every time more people contact you, you can make a larger demonstration. Every time you make a larger demonstration, you get more publicity.
Okay, so protesting against a specific judge, like that sounds quite effective, honestly. A lot better than just walking around with a sign and saying, and domestic violence against men. Everyone's like, what?
Yeah. Have photos to show you.
There's like a political approach, definitely. Like I'll take that on board and definitely look into what
we
I can
have
do
to
locally.
we have to do that at some point, though.
Yeah, absolutely. But in terms of if we as individuals see either female or male domestic violence or bidirectional violence or even emotional abuse, like what do you think would be some effective ways that we could try to resolve that? And also, what advice would you have for someone who is being abused, either emotionally or physically?
Well, for you, for the observer, I would get my phone out, start videotaping, and then step in and videotape the whole interaction. Videotape, that dates me. Doesn't use tape anymore, but record that whole interaction. And what was the other thing you said? That if we watch it, if we see it, and then you had a second part of that question.
Oh yeah, I said if you're like physical and emotional. So let's say hypothetically that my neighbor, who I knew quite well, was being quite clearly severely emotionally abused. Like, is there anything that I could do? But then also from the perspective of the actual abused person, like what can they do to prepare themselves and get a plan for?
I wish there was an easy answer for that. Besides just contacting agencies, giving that person support, bringing him to the police. But I had a neighbor who he was practically albino. He's very light skinned, practically platinum hair. And I just kept seeing bruises on his body. They were very obvious. And he was saying it's his girlfriend who does it. And I said, you have to do something about that. It's just going to get worse. Until maybe you lose your temper and you're the one who's going to be punished. So at least make a report. And so we called the police and we asked if we could come down and make a report. Or no, I guess he wanted to do over the phone. And but for some, I don't remember what it was, but they made it impossible to make a report. And he kept getting these bruises until one day he lost his temper and he hit her. And he was immediately arrested. While he was in jail awaiting the hearing, his car was towed. And so when he came out, he couldn't afford to get his car back. He lost his car. He couldn't go to jail, to his job. He lost his job. So he lost his job and his car. She stayed in his apartment. And since he wasn't paying any rent anymore, she just stayed there until she was evicted. So he lost his job, he lost his car, he lost his apartment, he lost all of his furniture, all of his belongings. And when she got evicted, some good-hearted person, another neighbor who immediately, as in our training, takes the woman's side, they took her in and gave her a free place to stay. And then she ripped them off and left town. So,
oh boy,
he was a victim. The good male Samaritan who took her in, that family, they were victims, and he just rotted in jail until it was time for his hearing. And by the time his hearing came up, she had already split town with all of the possessions, and so they dropped the charges, because she wasn't there to testify, and that's it. He was just one more victim cast aside, another homeless person.
Yeah, really.
You gotta set boundaries on crazy women.
Yep. So maybe a bit of financial support towards him, or if you could, if I as an individual could provide housing or something, even a back garden to set up a tent in, could be quite helpful. Yep. All right, that was great.
Honestly, when it comes to a guy like the one Equalist was talking about, I mean, the first step is to teach him how to set some boundaries on obvious things that go too far, physical violence, right? I mean, because he sure as hell was not setting healthy boundaries with his partner.
It's important to give him support. Tell him that this is happening to a lot of people. It's going to keep happening until unless we speak up. I'm on your side. Remember, I mentioned that movie, the made-for-TV movie about a male domestic violence victim, and how I recruited a whole group of victims just on the spot to do a little news report. So that was on the 11 o'clock news. And by 8 o'clock the following morning, it was on the 11 o'clock news. By the following morning, I had gotten over 30 calls in Sacramento from men who were being abused and who wanted to get help. So we're out there, there are so many people out there. And I organized a support group for these men, and I got a therapist to deal with it.
Oh, that's awesome.
I'm glad you're doing that. By the way, Always Me had a question that they've been waiting quite a while to ask. I was wondering if you would like to take it.
Sure.
They want to know if you've heard about the Michael P. Johnson studies that are arguing to try and invalidate studies showing gender symmetry in domestic abuse.
No, I haven't.
Or, I mean, we were talking about Michael Flood's attempts to do the same thing the last time we were chatting. I don't know if anyone else here has heard about those, but we can talk about those if you want. Always Me.
Sure. I'm not familiar with either of those names, but by all means, talk about it.
I can introduce you to Michael Flood if you want, but you may regret the experience. Since he's such a manipulative and disingenuous person.
The equalist.
I know the type.
I have to say that is a little bit unfair, because he has done some work setting up some resources for men. But I will agree that he is. I think his worldview is very strange, because didn't he cite one study at one point towards you, Ma, that said that there was no male partners in a certain country that were killed by their female partners, suggesting that all victims that were killed by their partners that were male were physical abusers. It's like, that's clearly wrong. That's absurd and ridiculous.
Yeah,
that was a very strange one. If you look at the numbers, they're incredibly weird. It's like all the women pretty much all of the women were labeled as having killed abusers, whereas literally zero of the men were labeled as killing abusers. And then if you look at the other numbers, it gets weirder from there. I'd have to dig it out, but it was a very, very strange study he sent me. I think it would be quite interesting to go into their methodology there, but
I just this is kind of irrelevant, but we're talking about Michaels and we're talking about the red pill. Michael Kimmel was the male feminist in the red pill who was saying all these obnoxious things about men's issues. And so I don't know if you remember who he is, but he recently did you see in the news that he had to resign his position because of the Me Too movement and women making accusations against him.
I thought that was wonderfully ironic.
Yeah.
Michael Flood is like a politer version of him, I think.
Was it Michael Kimmel, or was it Michael Mesner you're talking about?
No, I think he was in the movie too. Michael Kimmel.
Right. Okay. Fair enough. Yeah.
Yeah, Michael Kimmel, he came as a bit of even in the movie. And this was him on his best behavior for a movie.
Yeah.
So... were there any other questions?
Do you hear me?
Oh, Always Me, your mic is really...
Okay. No problem.
If you want to try again, I did hear some voice there.
If you type the question in, I'll read it out for you.
Okay.
Right, well, what do you think about any suggestions?
Are you talking to me?
Is this strictly about domestic violence, or are we also talking about like sexual violence, or what's the scope of the topic?
We could talk about the 3 physical violence forms that I mentioned at the end of our last chat, which nobody else has seen yet because we haven't released the video. But we were talking about proximate violence, physical violence, and more subtle violence like poisoning that women can do to men and tend to get away with because of battered woman syndrome.
I think
And
it's very.
also, they're just not suspicious of a woman the way they are of a man. So that's another reason they get away with it.
I mean, poisoning is
I
harder to detect than a bruise, also.
Yeah. I personally
so bad.
think that if we could actually find stats on who hires hitmen, which these stats just don't exist as far as I can see, if we could find stats, I'm pretty sure the majority of people hiring hitmen who aren't the mob would be women who are basically trying to get a husband or partner killed.
Gotten so bad in the UK and other places as well that even when they know the woman was guilty, even when a woman confesses to murdering her male partner or her ex or a man in general, the system is still designed in such a way as to do any mental loop necessary to give her a lenient sentence. And the new code word is vulnerable and diminished culpability. There was a story, I did a video on this, this was in London. A woman, they were both in their 70s, so they were both older. He was confined to a wheelchair. She beat him to death with a stick, and she was given a 2-year sentence. There was the Jari Wise case in Australia, where a woman hit her boyfriend while drunk, driving. He was walking, she was driving, killed him. She claimed it was an accident, but she had prior instances of violence against him. She received no jail time. That was the Jari Wise case. There's, of course, Sally Shellen, or Sally Callan, I've heard it pronounced different ways, who murdered her ex-husband, drove 70 miles to his house, broke in and killed him by hitting him in the head with a hammer. And she was released early because it was ruled that it was self-defense, because years before that, he had been abusive to her. There was no proof that he was abusive to her, but because he had abused her allegedly years ago, it made it okay to drive to his house and murder him. That made it self-defense, even though it was years after the event. So it's going to get to the point where it's not even about whether they suspect women. We've crossed that line anyways. That doesn't even matter anymore. The new conversation is literally directly, yes, we know this woman stabbed you. Yes, we know this woman murdered you. Yes, we know this woman was violent. Yes, we know this woman killed someone, but we're still going to come up with reasons as to why she should not go to prison.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, if a man and a woman were fighting, and then the man accidentally killed her, we would expect less consequences than a man who had very deliberately gone out to throw her down the stairs or something. So I think that it is an understandable argument, but certainly it's going to be applied more to in women's favour than it is to men, and it's certainly going over the line, given the stories that you've said. Yeah, that's way over the line, undeniably.
In those stories, though.
Yeah,
it didn't happen. It didn't in the Sally Shelling case. It wasn't during a fight. It was after they separated. They lived 70 miles away from each other, and she got into her car, drove to his house, and broke in. It wasn't during the fight.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Well, it's this whole thing around battered husband syndrome and battered spouse syndrome, which is what they use to excuse killings from either party. And certainly it's applied more to women in their favour, and it's certainly applied in situations that aren't appropriate. But I think you have to confront the real motivation behind that as well. But that's all I was trying to get across.
Really, for any kind of crime, though, a woman is treated more leniently at every stage. You know, she's the man is, if they do something together, the man's more likely to be arrested. If they're both arrested, he's more likely to be charged. If they're both charged, he's more likely to be charged for something more serious. If they're both charged with something more serious, he's more likely to be convicted. If they're both convicted of the same thing, he's more likely to get a stiffer sentence. So it's all the way down the line, and and for any kind of
judges are undeniably biased, like undeniably. It's so clear.
I wouldn't be, another thing you were talking about hiring hitmen, and that's a really interesting thing, and whether it's more women than men hiring it. But another thing that I would be interested in is the punishment. That I think if a man hires a hitman, they're both going to be punished equally, or maybe he'll even be punished worse as the one who's responsible, especially if he hires a woman. But if a woman hires a man, the man's going to be convicted of murder. The hitman's going to be convicted of murder, and she will get some lesser charge, even though she was the one who was orchestrating the whole thing.
There is a law that allows you to try groups of people for murder, even if some of them didn't actually do the murder. It's related to mob crimes, I think. But basically, you can try two people for the same crime, even if one of them never actually laid a hand on that person, as long as it can be proven that that person facilitated it.
Yeah, I met a woman at a party, and we hit it off. I won't continue with that, but she was telling me that she had been in prison, that she and her previous boyfriend had robbed a bank together. I think it was a political thing, though. It was one of those groups that were robbing banks to fund their political work. But they both robbed the bank, and as soon as they were caught, the police were saying to her, "Say it was his fault. You can get away with this." And she was saying, "No, that's not true. We both planned this together. No, just say he manipulated. No, it's not true. We're both in this totally together." And they were angry with her for taking the equal blame for it, and they finally, she insisted that she was equally to blame for, equally responsible for the whole crime, but she was out in a few months, and he was still in prison, which is why she was at the party, available for a relationship.
Do you think the motivation for the police? This is in the U.S., right?
Yes, this was California.
What do you think the motivation was on the police? I mean, wouldn't they rather nail two convictions?
I think there's just that protective thing that we go easy on a woman. It's probably, they probably didn't even believe her. They probably just thought he controlled her and made her say that.
Do you think it's possible? Well, we know that with the Duluth model, police are trained in a gendered way. Do you think there's training involved in relates to that? If a man and a woman commit a crime, to make that assumption?
Well, I would be surprised if there was training. I think it's just ingrained as one of our values now to protect the woman and not hold her responsible. I was thinking of another case of a different quarterback in the NFL who was also accused of domestic violence and immediately suspended and all problems with his career, but he denied it, and she denied it. She did not want to press charges. She said he didn't do it. But another thing in the law is that they will press charges even if the victim doesn't want to, because the assumption is that he is guilty, and if she doesn't want to press charges, it's just because she's afraid of him or being manipulated by him. So the DA will press charges in her name even if she doesn't want charges pressed. So they press charges against him, and then all the witnesses came out and testified that not only did he never lift a finger against her, but she attacked him with weapons, with a broom handle and other stuff, that there was domestic violence and she was the perpetrator. And all of a sudden, this idea that you press charges even if the victim doesn't want to press charges, all of a sudden that's not so important anymore. So no charges were pressed against her.
That sounds pretty typical from what I've heard. But one thing I wanted to say was, have you ever looked into police handbooks? Because I've often found that they are very much Duluth model training books, and they'll say things like, even if the man is bruised and battered and beaten within an inch of his life and she doesn't have a scratch on her, don't assume that he is the victim and she is the perpetrator, because you don't know what she's been through. Assume that she's the victim, essentially, is what they're going at.
I've never looked at the police handbooks, but I know when I was a victim and called the police a couple of times, and even though I was the one with the injuries, they never arrested her, even though supposedly if there are visible injuries, you're supposed to arrest the perpetrator. So not only was she never arrested, and they even literally laughed at the way she kept changing her story, but the advice that one officer gave me, I'll never forget, this is word for word what he said to me. He said, the next time she starts hitting you, you better get out of there as fast as you can. Because if she swings at you and misses and, say, hits a wall or something and just breaks a fingernail, if she breaks a fingernail trying to hit you, we'll arrest you. So that's the police training. And I know they get that training from the local shelter. They're in charge of that kind of training.
Do they
At
have
least
to?
they were honest with you and gave you that honest advice.
Yeah,
so
he
you
was
could
on my
make an
side.
informed
He
decision.
was sympathetic. He was trying to be nice. He wasn't,
Of course.
being a jerk.
I get it.
He's
I
saying
just
he
want
would
to
have
confront
had to arrest
something.
you.
One at a time, please, everyone.
I just want to ask Fred. So when the police officer was saying that we would arrest you if she swung and missed and broke a fingernail, that they would have to arrest you based on their training?
Oh, well, the phrase
Even if
he
they
used,
knew it was nonsense?
the phrase he used was, we will arrest you. I'll never forget him saying that. If she breaks a fingernail, we will arrest you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is a huge thing, is that men can be characterized as perpetrators and treated as such legally and through the police, just from trying to avoid injury. Like if you're trying to restrain someone as they're trying to hit you, you're just lightly holding their arms. Well, if they're moving with a lot of force, that's going to leave marks, and that's called ABH, I believe, which I can't remember what it stands for in the UK, but it's a kind of abrasive marking. But just to confront something in the chat that's related to this, it says, so many men are wusses who don't stand up to bad women, but a guy who does has an advantage. Being a gynocentric passive bitch who takes it as toxic masculinity. So what I've got to say to that is the focus should always be on getting yourself out of an abusive situation. You don't need that relationship. And you certainly don't need to be physically violent to do so, for the most part, I would say. And I don't think it's good for us to characterize victims as wusses for not putting themselves in legal jeopardy by defending themselves. I think the best thing is to encourage people to get away rather than be physically violent.
Oh, yeah, definitely. You're putting yourself at risk if you defend yourself, because you're likely to be arrested. It's that simple.
And not just arrested, but charged or imprisoned and all of this. And you gave that story of the guy who kind of lost his life because of being characterized as an abuser because he defended himself, didn't you?
What's sad is the reality is that if you're in a relationship with a woman, you're a free man at her, just because she's being nice to you, she likes you. Because basically any woman has the legal power to put any man in jail, to have him arrested if she wants. All she needs, she doesn't have to have a bruise from you. She could just burn herself cooking something and say you did it, or bang her knee on something and say you did it. She could use any injury. So every man who's walking around free is doing that at the generosity of the women in his life.
We've actually seen some videos of women beating themselves up. They got caught on camera doing it.
Yeah,
So
that
they'd be,
woman
like,
in
punching
the
themselves.
elevator.
I've seen that.
Yeah.
Spain is particularly crazy in its domestic violence laws, like unbelievable stuff. But there are some behaviours we can engage in as individuals to lower our risk very dramatically. So you can often pick up red flags way before it's getting to the point where they're banging their knee on a table to accuse you. Just like there's lots of red flags you can pick up to avoid physical violence from like anyone. So we're not necessarily helpless just because the law is against us. We can engage in behaviours to drastically reduce that likelihood, and we should.
Oh, careful! If there's any feminists watching, they'll say, "How dare you? You're not allowed to."
Oh, not allowed to victim blame. Yeah, but I don't care. I'm at risk.
Yeah.
And to be fair, a lot
we
of
need
feminists
to
move away from that whole victim blame thing. They are accepting that it's your choice to engage in risk reduction.
All girls are raised with the message of, be careful, because boys, you have to protect yourself from boys. You have to look at the signs of, don't get objectified by boys. Don't let them use you as, the girls are filled with advice about what to look out for with boys. And we don't tell that to boys. We need to raise boys with that knowledge also. Girls can use you. Girls can abuse you. Girls can objectify you.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm hoping that we can produce some such lessons like that in terms of what are the red flags. How can you maintain your independence? So I would say things like, don't get a joint bank account. If you're going to cohabitate with a woman, make sure you've vetted them quite thoroughly first. But then also, maybe have some storage space on the side, so that if they're starting to, smash things up of yours, well, then you're able to move it to a safe place, and then you are able to leave the house and be away from that abusive person without fear of all of your assets being destroyed. Like things like this, we can really, I think, do a lot of good if we push, risk reduction behaviors.
Some of those are a bit difficult to do, especially on a budget. But I think everyone can have everyone can have a get out of town bag.
Even just asking a friend, can I put some stuff in your cellar? Because I'm worried that it's going to be broken. And it will help. It will help both of you, because if you're not forced to be around an abusive situation, then they're less likely to get hurt. You're less likely to get hurt. You're less likely to get charged. All of these things.
What complicates things is if you have children, and you want to protect them.
Yeah, of course.
Very much so.
I've accepted not having children because of this, for the most part. I mean, there are, you can call social services and say, look, my child is being threatened, or like I'm having to intervene and take violence upon myself because they're going for my child. But in terms of how effective they would be at responding to that, I don't know exactly. I imagine they're much better than regular domestic violence services for men. I imagine child protection services are a bit better on that kind of stuff, because they don't have quite the same level of, Duluth and gender training and all of that.
There does seem to be a little bit of fight back in the UK, at least in Brighton at the moment, against charities that don't support men. But children are really one of the biggest things that keep men in abusive relationships, I think. We've got several examples of men like that on this server. If any of them want to speak up, I won't name them. But children are a massive weapon that women can wield against men. And it often comes down to how the justice system defines things. Because if a woman takes children away from the man, she's rescuing them. But if a man takes children away from the woman, he's kidnapping them. So it's a very, very dangerous thing for a man to do that, even if the woman is highly abusive and is trying to kill the children. We had an example very recently where a man warned the police, warned everyone that his partner was going to kill the kids. And then she did. And, cue surprise, basically. It's they just don't anticipate it, even though women are the majority of all child killers and child abusers, possibly mostly by virtue of the single mother epidemic. But there you go.
We were talking earlier about the kinds of abuse that a woman can do that are not measured in those studies that find it's equal both ways, but then there are all these other weapons available like proxy abuse. But taking a child away from a father is abusing both of them, actually. And if we included that in the statistics, again, women can be so abusive, that really raises the number when you consider all of the times that a woman interferes with that, which again is a weapon that either can use, but it's much more available to women than to men. Women have defined all of these issues. That's something I said earlier. And they've changed the definition of rape. They changed these definitions, and men need to start introducing ourselves into that dialogue and changing some of the definitions so that this is defined as domestic violence. If a woman says that she's on birth control and isn't, and tricks you into fathering a child, you feel raped. But it doesn't fit the definition, even though women are changing that, if you get her drunk, it's rape, even if she agrees, but she was drunk. Now that's classified as rape. This should be classified as rape. There are a lot of things that happen to men that should be classified as crimes, but we've been left out of that discussion.
Yeah. There's, I think that should come under stealthing to a large degree. I think that we had an example of that was quite famous a little while ago. I can't remember the exact details, but the woman basically was caught by the man upending a condom into herself, and it was in the news a little bit, but it didn't. Well, I say famous in terms of how famous these things get at all, which is not very it usually, but it did get a bit of coverage. Like she basically went into the bathroom, and he realized that he had left something in the bedroom or something. He went back out, caught her right in the middle of impregnating herself, and if he hadn't done that, she could have very easily have said, "Oh, I don't know how it happened. Maybe the condom leaked or something." And we've had like chat show hosts encouraging women to do this, like saying, "What was it, girl? I'm not saying not to, but look at my. I'm not saying to do it, but look at my face. What's my face telling you?" And she's like, given a go-ahead expression. It's just like this whole crowd of women laughing, and there's like one man at the back just sort of looking sort of stunned.
Yeah, there's a clip in the Red Pill from a talk show, a chat show like that, and the host this woman complained, the man does not want to have children, and the host said, "Should she trick him into it?" And the audience was just cheering for it. It's right in the movie.
I think that may even be the clip, but I think I've seen like a couple of different news stories where a man has caught a woman doing this, but much more frequent are the sort of the Ask Reddits and the like the other Reddit stuff where a man will say, "Oh yeah, I realized that my wife was cheating. Sorry, not cheating. She was not taking her birth control because it was weirdly full. You know, like the packet was weirdly full, and she should have taken an awful lot more. Or like he found a hole in the condom wrapper, or something like that. And it's the sort of thing where like there's not really anything he personally can do, and I think that's really quite horrifying because, you know, it's 18 years of child support and possibly alimony for life, and he might not even get to see the kids and stuff like that. And
there was a movie decades ago called Serpico, starring Al Pacino, and it's a true story. It's about a New York City undercover cop, Frank Serpico, who exposes police corruption, and the dirty cops set him up to get shot at the end of the movie. It's an exciting movie. It's with Al Pacino. You should watch it because it's a true story, and he's a real guy. And after the movie, so he retires, he gets shot and retires from the police force. After the movie, a woman decided she wanted to become a single mother and tricked him into fathering a child for her and told her friends that she was going to do it. So in the trial, the court accepted that he was tricked into it. They acknowledged that because her former friends testified that this was her plan. And even though the court accepted that he was tricked into fathering the child, she was still awarded over 90% of his police pension in child support. So if you watch the movie, you know, watch it with the knowledge that everything you're watching him go through, she wins by sleeping with him one night.
that's astonishing and heartbreaking and horrible. I just don't have any words for that one. It's I'm going to have to look into that one. It's quite amazing the amount of power that they have while pretending to be victims.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. His attorney actually was Karen DeCrow, who was the former national president of the National Organization for Women in the United States. And she really believed in equality. She became a feminist because she really believes in equality. And she became his attorney because she said, we went through all this trouble to legalize abortion. And once we did that, we gave women control over their parental destiny. No woman becomes a parent unless she wants to become a parent now. That's what we did for women. But with power comes responsibility. And if women are going to take that power to decide whether or not to be a parent, they have to take that responsibility of taking care of the child and not dump it on someone else who had no power in making that decision. So she was the president. You know, she was a prominent feminist, and she represented him, but lost.
Are there any?
Yeah, I was going to ask if we're about out of questions.
Oh, does anyone else have an interesting question?
I've got a real life story that I might be able to share on this occasion. I don't know.
So what
Go
would
ahead.
you say are the primary barriers then to men getting away from abusive relationships, and how can we overcome them?
Well, I think the primary thing is the protector role. You know, that all of these issues are related. When I started the men's movement, that was one of the things I introduced, because there was a father. The things that you're talking about, people acknowledge. Fathers knew that. You know, there were fathers' rights groups even at the time, but they didn't see the relationship among all the issues. They didn't see it as an issue of sexism. And so the draft was something where military conscription. They were pretty traditional. A lot of them wanted custody of their children so that their second wife could raise their children. You know, they weren't really as enlightened as many of the men now, but they didn't see the relationship. They didn't see that by that the draft is based on the idea that men are disposable in society, and if you're disposable in society, you're disposable from the family. You know, so and the draft is saying that men are more violent than women. Women are gentle, men are violent. So men make good soldiers, women make good mothers, good parents. You know, they didn't see the relationship of how this reinforces it. So what we need to do is attack the whole thing. We need to attack that protector role and say that if women want to share responsibilities and share raising children and sharing, you know, all of this stuff, they need to share that role too, because it's the protector role that keeps us from complaining. Because that's not a good thing for, you know, that lowers our life expectancy. It's not a good thing for a soldier to say, "Ow, medic," you know, like, you man up. Don't get help. Don't seek help. Don't think of yourself as a victim. Don't complain. Those are all related to the protector role, and it's what women find attractive. It's related to the initiator role. All of these roles are interconnected, and I don't think we really can get men to demand equal rights until they start seeing that you know, these are all interconnected, that we need to be treated as equals with women across the board.
Yeah. There was an interesting. We don't usually talk about AVFM, but they had an interesting. It wasn't an article so much as a parable called "The Princess and the Plough Horse," where it laid out that. It's a very interesting read, and I'm not sure I should spoil it, but it's very worth looking up because it goes through this whole thing of like men overvaluing their protector role and not realizing that it's actually a form of servitude. But
Mhm.
yeah. Oh, by the way, somebody had a story they wanted to tell about. I think it was about being abused, but I'm not sure. Or who was it? They spoke up very quietly.
That was me, Sid.
All right. If you can raise your mic volume or something, we'd love to hear your story.
Just a second, I'll do that.
Okay. What did Equalist? Did you want to say something?
Yeah, is this voice okay?
Yeah. Sure. Go ahead, please.
A lot of screaming started. You know, a female was screaming and whatnot, and I thought that there was spousal abuse.
Sorry,
going on.
I didn't get most of that. Did everyone else get that?
I didn't get it. No.
I
Missed it.
can't hear a word of it, honestly. So if you type it in the voice chat, one of us will read it out. That's no problem. If you can't sort your mic out.
Okay,
Sorry,
I'll
Sid,
do
you are
that.
roboting. Anyway, does anyone else have any interesting stories about this that they might like to share? No pressure at all.
I just think in general, this is something that people are starting to notice more and more, but they feel like they're not allowed to speak about it or not allowed to talk about it.
Might have had some echo there from somebody's mic. If everyone could make sure their mics are muted at all times when not speaking, that'd be good. But by the way, something I meant to mention earlier was an interesting article I saw years ago about the Rwandan genocide and how feminists are swooping in to basically train boys to respect women in the hope that that will somehow stop another massacre from happening. I seem to remember they were actually doing this to the victims of the massacre. But it's very interesting because they had these two lines that were almost at odds with each other. It's like for the boys, they're going to teach them to respect girls, and for the girls, they're going to teach them to respect themselves. And it's, you know, it seemed almost narcissistic in a way, but it was also very interesting because a large number of the children during the Rwandan genocide were killed by the women. Like the men went after other men, and the women often went after each other or the children. At least that's what I remember. But don't quote me on that. The most of the victims were men and boys. We've gone a bit quiet. It sounds like is anyone having mic issues here? Right, never mind.
So you were suggesting that like the largest barrier to men leaving abusive relationships is that they view themselves as a protector, and therefore they can't see the abuse as serious enough to warrant leaving. So what would be some good strategies to convince them that actually leaving is quite a good idea, and seeking some independence and all of those sorts of things?
Well, there is one thing, that's just a conundrum, which is that feeling, if I leave, I don't get to see my children anymore. I don't get to protect them if she's abusive towards them, or I just don't get to see them. And if I take them, I'm going to be stopped. So that I honestly don't know what to do about that. But in terms of being a victim, God, you just have to raise their awareness that you're a human. You have the right to not be hit just as much as a woman has a right to be in a relationship where you don't get hit. You don't get there's better things out there. I wish I had a better answer. I'm sorry.
No, it's understandable. I mean, I don't have two brilliant answers, to be honest, because it is a very complicated issue. There's parts of it that are certainly to do with social roles, and there's other parts of it that are clearly very systemic, that they both exacerbate each other quite severely, I think. One thing that I've had success with, because they don't, men are very used to being knocked about, or don't necessarily see it as the worst thing. If a man gets into a fight with another man and leaves with a couple bruises, it's not too big a deal. But if a woman was to get into a fight with a man, they would be maybe a bit more emotionally affected by that, and maybe avoid that person in future or those environments. So one thing that I've started focusing on when I talk to abuse victims is to focus on the potential legal and social, legal, and financial costs to what they're engaging in, and the risks that they face to those things. And they do tend to respond a little bit more. When you say, for example, like, they're engaging in this behavior now, and you're acting as though it's acceptable to you. And if we look at what it would be like if they were to engage in more serious forms of behavior, like how it would affect you. So like if you're, let's say they're like throw a glass or something or break something, and it's like, well, what about if they break your computer that's worth like £1,000? What if they key your car and like put out your tires and you can't go to work? Like, and I find that tends to be a little bit more effective.
That's good advice. Since there's silence, I was thinking of something earlier when we were talking about the protector role, and I thought I'd just share a kind of funny story. With women, as as feminist as they can be, still say, "Would you walk me to my car?" When they were leaving a meeting or something. And it's still a reminder that the expectation is that if we do get attacked, my job is to die as slowly as possible to give her time to escape. And that's automatically my job, not if she's my wife or my daughter, but just any woman in a meeting feels like she has the right to demand that of me. And so I was walking a woman to the car recently, and I said, "I'm doing this because you asked me, but I just want you to know, if we get attacked, I'm out of here. So you better run as fast as me." And she laughed. I don't know if she realized how serious I was.
Yeah,
I'm
it
just
can
going to
actually
read
be a
out.
dangerous process.
Oh yeah.
Was it?
I was just going to read out Sid's story that he was trying to tell earlier, but his mic was having issues. So he's written, "I am a factory owner. 5 days ago, I was working late. The house next to my factory had a loud screaming voices coming from there. All of a sudden, it sounded like a case of spousal abuse. The owner of that house had sometimes worked for me, on and off. So I told my manager to go to that house and get that guy. It took a while, but my manager managed to bring him to my office. I asked him if he was hitting his wife. He claimed that he has not. He was locked in the room all this time, and his wife was saying that she was going to call the police and say that he was beating her. I told him that I will see into it personally, and if it turns out he hit her, I will take care of him personally. So I went in the house and asked his wife what is going on. She asked me who I was. I told her that I am the factory owner. So she said that her husband was hitting her after coming back from work. So I asked, where did he hit you? She did the most outrageous thing. She slapped her own face in front of me and said that he slapped her. So clearly someone, I hope I didn't cut out there, but clearly someone is faking if she's slapping her own face and saying that he did that in front of you, which is unbelievable, honestly. But I suppose she thinks rationally that she doesn't have to perform to you necessarily. She just has to perform to the police. But I suppose you could act as a witness and say that she's done that to cast some doubt that she's being truthful.
Yeah,
You know what I've noticed?
I think we have to stand up for our fellow man a lot more, and and set that example that if we see something that we're willing to testify, we're willing to help you out. People have to see us standing up for other men, not just for women.
You know, something I've noticed is they don't, like in a lot of these cases, it seems an awful lot like the women involved don't feel like they need to really put on a good show or anything like that. They don't feel like they have to do that because they just know that they're automatically going to be believed anyway. And even if they aren't believed, then there's absolutely no consequences for them. So why not?
That's definitely a problem. That there are no downsides to making false allegations. You get something, and it's just a matter of how much you're going to get out of it. But I was in a custody situation where it was just one false accusation after another, just tens of them, and there was no downside. It was always incumbent upon me to prove my innocence, to bear the expense, to well, I don't. My son's listening, so I don't want to get too involved with this. But the system encourages it. There's no disincentive to making a false allegation. You win at what you hope for is a complete victory, that the person goes to jail, that you get sole custody. But even if you don't, to get that, it's not like you've lost anything. You've still caused the other person a tremendous amount of grief and expense.
Yeah, in the UK, you actually get given thousands and thousands of pounds for every accusation you make as a woman. It's there's like charities that are just waiting, and like victim funds, crime funds, and things, compensation funds.
Mhm.
They'll just give you this money, and then you don't have to pay it back if you're proven a liar.
Right.
That's
And you would
kind of-
think that after a lot of false allegations, that the person making the false allegations would start to lose credibility. You know, oh yeah, sure, we've heard this before. But it in a lot of ways, it's the opposite. You know, they feel like the more false allegations, that just means that you've gotten away with this, and they're going to try even harder to nail you the next time because you keep getting away with it. So, you know, you can spend a lot of money trying to defend yourself.
In the UK, they're not actually allowed to keep track of repeated false accusers. There was a very famous case of this really horribly obese, horribly ugly-looking woman who accused like 14 different men of raping her and sent several to prison for like 4-year sentences. And like they like I'm saying, they served like 4 years, 3-4 years in jail before she was caught. And you know, they were just saying that like the police weren't allowed to keep track of her, like, because it was just like all these victim charities and things would go right down their throats if they did.
I honestly think that since the legal system is so flawed, we should not be following the laws. I know that I certainly would not. Well, then again, I'm in a position of power, but damn, we
I
should
think
make
that's a
their
very,
fears
I think that's a very, very bad thing to say, to be honest. Not following the law, it's unless you have to do it to protect yourself, and it's a matter of like life and death and livelihood. I'd say, you know, really, really hard no on that. You've got to be very, very careful. And we've got to be careful not to be telling people to break the law, because it's our reputation is on the line as well. So please, nobody encourage the breaking of the law on this live stream. Thank you, or on the Discord generally, because we can actually get in trouble for it.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on something that Sid's written in the chat. He wrote, I said that he's a witness now, like he's witnessed her directly faking an assault, and he can testify on that. And he said, she thinks I have proof against us, and now she will think twice before trying to act up in front of her husband. And I just want to urge some caution on that, because it seems to me that often men think they've solved the issue in some way. But now that she's been caught out like that, she'll still have the same goals and the same feelings in the relationship, and still react in similar ways and act towards those goals. But now that she's failed in that way, she will then just engage in more sophisticated, more effective ways of framing him. So I think that it's good that you've witnessed that, and it's good that she has less credibility, definitely. But I think we, as like other people that are aware of men's issues, should be taking the next step and saying, well, you know, what can you do to encourage that man to leave, or like encourage that man to not be forced to be around abusive situations, because that's the best result, is to get away from an abuser, that we should all strive for.
Well, I mean, Sid, if you're going to pursue this further at this point, well, you know, you prove that she has a personality disorder, which she does if she fucking slapped her face in front of you. But, you know, get something like, you know, more concrete for the court or whatever.
Yeah, I have noticed that in debates and arguments and cases like this, emotions are a strong weapon, especially if you can get sympathy and play the victim and have people actually take you seriously. I mean, the difference between men and women really in terms of victimhood is if a man is a victim, and you see this in all sorts of TV shows and films and things as well. If a man is a victim, he's seen as pathetic, but if a woman is a victim, she's seen as a victim.
I mean, yeah, like men who are victims are much more likely to get told to suck it up. Like, oh, you're making a big deal out of it. Like, that sort of stuff. But if a woman's an abuser, yes, she's way more likely to be enabled, by fellow women, fellow men. You go, girl. Like, yeah, if he can't handle me at my worst, he doesn't deserve me at my best. Like,
this is actually one of the reasons I tell people to talk to female to male transgender people in general about how society viewed them before and after, because we have heard several stories from different trans people who have said that when they were a woman, they got all sorts of special treatment and deference and so on and so forth. And when they were male, they got a lot of abuse. It was very isolating. It felt very cold to them. And they would see women sort of shaking their heads at men just existing on the bus and things like that. We do actually have an upcoming article about it. I should remember to prompt the person who's sending it into me, but it's all about the experiences of somebody transitioning and how they were treated before and after. Because before, there was one part where they were in school and they were jostling around their desk, and the boy next to them got yelled at for it, and the teacher said he was going to get detention or something, and they, as a girl at the time, put their hand up and said, no, actually it wasn't them, it was me. And she was just like, oh, okay, no detention, just carry on then, basically. Just no punishment, nothing, just So it's very, very interesting. The you and also talking to female MRAs as well, because they often notice things that men don't, because they know what it's like to be female, and they know how they are treated by men and so on and so forth. So when they see men being treated in a way that they would find uncomfortable, they can often highlight it, whereas we might actually minimize it. Oh, JD, yes, you can tell your story if you'd like to.
Hi, can you all hear me good?
Oh, crystal clear.
Sure. Would you mind if I have my face camera on, because I'm not going to be hiding anymore. So would you? Oh no, I can't. But it's fine. So
all right.
My name is John.
Come on, man. Let the man show his face.
It's fine. It's fine, but it's quite of a story, and I have been quote unquote hiding because I've been so terrified of everything lately. I have been taking heavy anti-anxiety medication. So back in 2020, this started off online, but then it escalated to now people are asking me questions, and I have been threatened with violence. In 2020, there's this woman. I will not name her. I'm going to call her Karen. I cannot say her real name, but this woman has to be probably one of the most evil women I've ever met in my life. She was in our friend group. Now, in public, to all the people, she is warm, welcoming. Oh, I show love and kindness. In private, with us in private, she'll scream out the hard R N-word, call black people her dirty slaves, called homosexuals the derogatory term, and anybody who is autistic are dirty. I'm not going to say the word, but dirty that. She would use me as the scapegoat whenever something goes wrong because I am a person of color, I'm Latino, and I'm also autistic. Nonstop, every single day, just beating me down like crazy. And to the point that back then we were just best friends, but now she's my girlfriend. She pulled me aside and she's like, JD, why are you letting her talk to you like that? Well, finally, I was like, you know what? You're right. I stood up to her and I said, you're going to quit with the racism. You're going to quit with the ableism. And you're going to start talking to people with respect. Well, she was offended that a man stood up to her. I'm lower than her. She said it herself. You're beneath me because you're autistic. You're a nobody. You're beneath me. I'm better than you. How dare you talk to me like that? So she leaves. Tarnishes me online. Just brings my name down. And I cannot do nothing because, as she said it, she's a woman. You can't do nothing to me. So 3 years, I decided, you know what? Fuck you. I'm going to go live my life. 3 years, I've been fine. She decided to start slandering me again. Now, I warned her the last time. I said, if you come at me with this again, you better expect me to defend my name against you. I don't care that you think you're a god or something. You better expect me to defend my name, which I did. She was blaming me because she did this to another person, and this other person decided to go at her. So she started blaming me for it. So I went public and I said, no, it's happening because you are a blatant, smug racist, and you think the entire planet revolves around you. Once again, she was offended. So she did the one thing that will destroy any man. She went publicly and said that I held down and raped 2 little girls. My heart was shattered. And here's the thing. I'm going to start screaming because I'm going to tell you all right now. I've been holding it in. You have no idea how much pain, rage, and anger I have in me. I cannot defend myself because everybody believes her. No matter what I say, they believe her. Here's the thing. The 2 victims, the 2 little girls, they're grown women who came forward and said, this never happened. This man never touched us. But she just said with the most smug, I'm better than you attitude, said, those little girls are just brainwashed. See how much victims they are? And they're saying, they even showed their faces and they said, this man never touched us. We are not victims. We were never groomed. We were never raped. But people believe them. She said how much of a victim she is because I hurt her. She's like, this man is abusing me. But then she goes out and posts my private email. And to this day, I'm still being harassed. To this day, I'm still being harassed. She's saying she's the victim and she did all this. Boom. I'm sorry.
How long ago did she accuse you of being a pedophile?
That was last year and it's still happening today. So
you're being like harassed by like anonymous accounts, presumably, right?
No. You got. Let me get. I'm gonna get to that right now. Sorry, this is quite a story, and I just want to finally just get a chance to finally let it out. She sent people to harass me. 3 of them wanted to hear my side of the story, so I explained it. They left me alone because they found out this woman's crazy. 1 didn't, and here's the thing. He was like, it's another guy who is a hardcore simp for this woman. I mean, he wanted her so bad. So he did everything. He made false screenshots, more false allegations. He went to the victims and threatened them. You better keep quiet. But, the victims, they're not scared. They went even louder. So he went after them too. They never touched my girlfriend because my girlfriend, she said herself, none of this ever happened. Leave me alone. They left her alone. They tried to, but she's like, you better leave me alone. They wouldn't. They left her alone. They made videos about me. My own best friend, who I called him a brother, turned his back on me and started spreading more. I wanted to start cutting. I asked my best friend, who also was a victim of this guy, because like I said, this guy is going after my friends most of my friends are also in the Latino community, calling my best friend Goji. We call him Goji, calling him George Lopez. Go back over the wall and get a green card. Then you can come talk to me because I'm better than you. I'm a white guy. And I'm like, you guys are saying this publicly, but you're still coming at me? Look what these people are saying. But I'm still the person at fault here. They're not saying this in private. They're saying this in public, and you're all praising them. Is it because I'm colored? Is it because I'm autistic? What is wrong with you people? You're saying this in public. So I decided I'm fighting back. I posted everything, all the N-words she said, the derogatory term for homosexual, the this is going to be the best part for all of you. The part where she faked having brain cancer and lying that she's dead. She sent somebody to tell us she's dead. The brain cancer killed her, but she was cured by magic. Now she's alive. What the absolute fuck is wrong with her? So
It sounds like dark triad personality to me.
but here's the thing. So we post that publicly. The racism, the fake cancer. I posted my girlfriend and the other girl saying this never happened. And guess what? She went public with a smile and said, his evidence is fake. And people believed her. I had hardcore.
Have you spoken to an attorney at all?
No. Yes, I did. One of my best friends has a degree in law. We gave her everything, and she said, "There's nothing here that can convict you. There's nothing here."
So what about convicting her of slander?
We can't. Because I've been reading, they keep getting away with it. I'm sorry, she kept getting away with it. She keeps getting away with everything. No matter
how about getting a mental health professional involved, though?
No matter how hard I try, she got away with it. So, this is what I did. I don't know about you guys, but I'm a man of faith. So I decided, you know what? I'm letting it go. I can't keep fighting this because it's draining me now. It's hurting my friends. It's hurting me. They keep coming at me. They're threatening my friends, mocking me, doing up. You know what? I put it in God's hands. You know what? I can't do this no more. I'm on the verge of suicide. I cannot do this no more. I have to get help, which I did. I got therapy, and thank God. The antidepressants, as much as I hated it, really, really worked. This woman finally left me alone. So she's not bothering me anymore. I guess my post finally called her out. She got scared and she ran off. Yes, legally she got away with it. And yes, my name is still tarnished. But thank God she finally left me alone. One of her friends.
I'm glad she's left you alone now. I mean, I personally would have tried to hire her, like an attorney, and seen if perhaps she could have been done for slander or something like that.
I did. I spoke to one. But the reason the reason why I didn't go through with it was because, one, her father got killed. 2, she was kicked out of her house. 3, somebody hacked her bank account and drained every single penny that she had. So she had to be forced to move back into a toxic household. She was telling everybody, I'm faking my autism. I was self-diagnosed. And in her own household, her mother is telling her, you're faking your depression. You're faking this. Grow up. So as much as I've been slandered, I firmly believe she got what she deserved. Losing a parent, horrible. I wish the best for her. I hope you heal. But, you got what you deserved. Now you know the pain I feel. But unlike me, you can never heal from the pain of losing a parent. I can heal from this because I know I never hurt nobody. I never touched a woman. I'd never done any of that. And I mean that literally. I was raised to wait till you're married to have sex. So I've never touched a woman. My girlfriend's the same way. She said publicly, this man never touched me. We both were raised to wait till we're married. So I've been with her for 3 years. We've never touched each other. And we're fine with that.
I'm really glad that it seems to have started to settle down, JD.
It's settling down publicly, but there's still videos out about me slandering me. My best friend backstabbed me. But I have to say, yes, technically, yes, it's over. Like, everything's calmed down. I'm still getting harassed here and there. People still ask me questions, but it's me mentally. My craving for revenge, the nonstop rage and hatred has been eating me up. And I'm trying to do certain exercises to let it go. I'm saying, this woman got what she deserved. I have to let it go. Because here's the thing. Like my father told me, like other people told me, if you're going to go get revenge, you better dig 2 graves, because you're not going to be hurting the other guy. You're going to be hurting yourself as well. So
I'm really glad that you're focusing on self-care there. It seems an awful lot like this is very nearly destroyed if you want to talk more about it in support, that that would
I
be
have. I've
pretty
been
welcome.
really. I've been showing my, like, here's the thing. With my other Discord groups, I'm always happy and glad. You have no idea how happy I found this server that's finally dedicated for men to finally get help. I've been really venting like crazy in this Discord server because I'm saying I'm a firm believer. Women who lie about sex crimes like this, they need to serve the same sentence that the person they falsely accused would have served. I looked it up. I would have served 20 to life. She needs to serve 20 to life now. People who have here's the thing. I know it has to do with race. She's white. She said the N-word. The person she sent to harass me pledged power to the Ku Klux Klan, threatened to rape 2 girls if they kept defending me. And it went public, and they never got any trouble.
Mm.
So I'm like, it has to do with race. My best friend's black. They went after her and saying, "Is this because she's from Eastern India?" She voiced her support to me because here's the thing: they all saw this woman's behavior. When she voiced her support for me, she got a message on DeviantArt saying, "Why is it that you Eastern Indian N-words always want to support this guy? You're just a dirty N-word like the others." And she came to me in tears. She was crying. She was like, "This man used to be my best friend, and now she's slurring the N-word at me." I'm like, this is the world we have to live in. And here's the thing. I'm sorry for taking so much time, but you have no idea how happy I am that I'm finally letting this out. Because I'm walking around my hometown. I'm walking around. I'm posting on media, but I have my head down, thinking these people are looking at me like I'm some kind of monster.
Yeah, it's quite horrific stuff, undeniably.
I'm a victim.
Yeah,
I'm a
of course
victim.
you are.
When I was
Yeah,
3 years old,
100%.
when I was 3 years old, I was taken to a basement and sexually abused. I know what it's like to have that happen. It happened to me. I would never put that on somebody else. Oh, and let me tell you something. They also were saying I was faking my abuse because you're supposed to enjoy it. You're a man. I was 3 years old.
Yeah, it's disgusting stuff to say, absolutely. Like, horrible. I'm glad you found the antidepressants really helpful and that you've gone to therapy and you've been finding that like really helpful. It's great stuff. It sounds like you've gone through some stuff and you're like really on the path to recovery.
I hope so, because I still feel rage.
One thing I will say, just on being falsely accused in general, is because it sounds like you had quite a lot of evidence, genuinely, that this.
Oh yeah, I still have it.
Yeah. So, if you were to go to an attorney, I know you said you did, right? But if you were to do that and get an estimate of price, and then you were to send forth your evidence to her and say, look, I have this evidence that this is slander. Here are the legal consequences of slander. I've had advice from legal aid and that it seems like we have quite a strong case, and I will do this if you continue slandering me.
I did that.
They would very like, okay, fair enough.
Fair enough.
That was just some advice I wanted to give to people who are falsely accused in general, is that can stop the slander before it gets too bad.
I want to do that, but she said she'll come after me.
Apologies.
She said, she said that I'm defaming her. I'd never faked having cancer. I'm going to sue you. I'm like, you falsely accused me of something that could put me in prison for life, and now she's like, I'm just a little girl. Women, you're 31 years old. You're not no little girl. But I have to say it. I'm glad she got what she deserved. Now I'm trying to heal myself. I hope the people that are slandering me, harassing me, I hope they get what they deserve too. Because I'm saying I want revenge, but I know it would kill me. It would destroy who I am.
Yeah, it's probably good that you're not. Let's just say it's probably a very good thing that you're not going for revenge, because I mean I've had vengeful thoughts in the past, and they can absolutely rule your life, and you end up basically having a copy of that person living inside your head.
Yes.
And yeah, they attack you constantly, don't they?
No idea. It's so.
How long were you two together, though?
Say what? We were never. Oh, her and I were never a thing. She was just a friend.
Oh, okay.
If God, personally, I thought she wanted to be with me because that's what I thought, because she was nuts. But here's the this is the second time I spoke this out at another group. They all said the same thing, that this woman is crazy. And but my girlfriend, she said it never happened. The other girl said it never happened. So guess what? It never happened. But these people, they're quick to believe anything.
It sounds like the most awful thing. I can't even imagine of that happening to me. It's dreadful. Is there anyone else who's had a similar experience?
Before we start, let me just say one thing. Thank you guys a lot for letting me let this out. I really needed to let all that out. Thank you guys for hearing my story. Thank you.
It's no problem, JD.
It was good for us to hear as well, because when you hear the nuances of the issues, it makes you much more able to speak about them effectively, I think. But I'm glad you found that therapeutic. One experience, it sounds like nothing compared to JD's, but one experience I've had is, because it was just related to the proxy violence, and it just came to my mind now that we were talking about a while ago. It wasn't with my partner. What actually happened was, I was walking home one day, and there was a woman and a boyfriend, and the woman stopped to take a photo of his house and was facing away from me. And, I waited like a good distance behind her as the boyfriend walked onwards, because I didn't want to get in the way of a photograph. And I stayed a good distance because I didn't want to startle her. But even though I was a good distance away, she turned around and looked very startled. And then she ran to her boyfriend. And I don't know exactly what was said, but he came, he ran back towards me, or like stomped back towards me, and basically said like, because I was still walking home and they were walking home, and he came and said like, are you stalking my girlfriend? Do you want to rape her or something? And then I started to explain. I like went, no, I was just trying not to get in the way of a photo. But midway through that, like, he just punched me like straight in the mouth, and I like fell over and like hit my head a bit. And I did call the police for that assault, but nothing seemed to come of it because they believed that I'd been engaging in some sort of nefarious behaviour. So I think that's just a good example of how the protector role causes a lot of these issues.
Yeah, you've got to be very, very careful when you're out and about. It's I had a couple of women back when I was probably a lot more naive about this stuff, who were shouting at me across the street, and I just crossed the street to ask them why they were shouting at me, and out of nowhere, just like this entire crowd of young men materialized. They sort of surrounded me and started, asking questions and like basically, what are you doing to these young women? What are you trying to do? And I suddenly felt like, one of those mad stalkers you see on TV, they're going after the women. And then one of them sort of muttered something about stabbing me. And so I just sort of backed out of there, very quietly, and left before they could decide to actually do something to me. But it could have very, very easily, that could have turned into a curb stomping party quite quickly. Just the way they were.
And I wanted to talk a bit about like these red flags in women. I mean, these are red flags in everyone for the most part. So one way that I avoid like physical violence is I tend to know like 10 to 15 minutes before when someone's going to become violent and be able to leave. So, for example, one thing, and I've observed this in relationship, like in my own relationships and walked away, but I've also observed it at parties with just random people. But one, for example, like if someone's unhappy with me, they're not necessarily behaving aggressively or raising their voice, but if they're standing closer to me than they normally would be, and especially if I step backwards like a while later, and they then step forwards and further intrude on my space, that's like a huge sign that that they're like that there's an imminent threat of violence. Like there's just waiting for some kind of opportunity or some emotional thing that will cause them to act out and strike me. So if you can actually figure out these red flags, you can actually avoid a lot of issues quite early on. So for example, I think that a lot of men will observe a red flag in women that is genuinely like, it's unbelievable, it's too much, it's not an acceptable relationship, but they'll then go and argue the point and try to confront them on this red flag, even if it's just to talk about it and say why it's a problem. But I think the best approach is to just leave those relationships immediately, as soon as you observe those red flags.
We do actually have a list
I'm
of.
sorry to interrupt, but I'm going to have to cut this off because it's been 2.5 hours, and I've got just a lot of stuff I need to do.
Oh no, it's totally fine. Thank you for joining us, Fred. And if you ever want to come around again, please do. Just every
right.
Friday.
Absolutely, be in contact.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
me
definitely
too.
plan on emailing you. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Me too. I actually also have to kind of go, but this is the biggest chat we've ever had. So we are growing, and this is very exciting. Fred, thank you so much for coming. Thank you, everybody who shared. This is obviously a very difficult topic to talk about. So let's make this grow. You know, next Friday, let's make this grow. Let's keep this going.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I mean, as I was saying, we're on every Friday. So 5 p.m. UK time. What time is it for you, Blue?
It's noon for me, 12 o'clock Eastern time.
All right, then. So thank you, everyone who joined. And if you want to go, please do. There's no sort of, you don't have to stay for a particular time period or anything.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for joining.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you all for speaking.
Yeah, thanks. You gave me some
Sure.
good ideas, by the way, on how to like effectively start engaging politically. So thanks for that. That was great.
Thank you. Thank you, guys, again. God bless you all.
And you too.
Mm.
Good night, everyone.
No.
If anyone wants to still keep speaking, please do. We will be on for as long as you want to be on. But
Right.
it does feel like people are winding up now. So
yeah, fair enough.
Oh, what's his
right,
background again? This equalist guy.
Oh, Fred.
His name is
So I was
Fred
just gonna
Hayward.
say-
He was on the Red Pill documentary. He's been involved in the men's rights movement since the 70s. So he's one of the founders, if you will. He's been doing this for a very long time, and he's a lot of experience.
Yeah, so to answer your question, Ma, I don't have a definitive list as of yet. And it is something that I would like to put together, actually. I do think it could be useful in terms of especially doing it rigorously, you know, what behaviors you're engaging in and how much that will increase your risk, like so that people can make informed decisions. And then also what are red flags, how to avoid, how to seek out support, how to, you know, hopefully ask for support in a way that is actually convincing. Like, these are all sorts of things that I would like to start doing, but it's difficult. There's a lot of my personal judgment that would go into that, and I'd like it to be a bit more objective.
Yeah, I don't want to color your sort of views on it. So I'm thinking that I shouldn't forward you our red flag list, but
Maybe not. Yeah.
yeah. But if you want to come up with something yourself, that would be very interesting. We'd look forward to maybe putting that on the website or something, if it's well
Yeah.
cited and stuff. Yeah, we have actually, like, we tried to formalize a red flag list and it ended up very long, and I'm not sure that many people really liked it. We did have one show it to one guy who was stuck in a relationship full of red flags, but unfortunately he couldn't see any of the red flags himself because he was very enraptured with this person. I hate to even nail it down to female, because I don't think he ever saw her face. Like, I think she was sending him pictures and stuff. But men can be very,
Yeah.
very trapped in their, like, they have this enamored sort of glowing picture of the woman. Oh, obviously women do this as well when they get trapped in a relationship like this, but
Of course, yeah, it's a very
they
human
end up,
experience. We know that
yeah,
both men and women stay with their partners until they die a lot of the time. So it's a
yeah,
complicated one. More helpful than having just a list is having illustrated examples of what that looks like, and then you can
yeah,
identify with that experience or not, and that can be a bit better. But one thing I
yeah,
will say, because we've talked a lot about how can we reduce domestic violence, both as an individual experiencing it or potentially experiencing it in the future, if you observe it in others, and then also what can we do to raise awareness or to challenge judges who are biased and all these sorts of things. One thing that I think that we've not brought up yet, but it's possible, but I just wasn't here for it, is learning what services exist currently, because I know there are some amazing services for men that are volunteer based, and what can we do to support those services. So for instance, if we had a big list and a map where they are, maybe we could get some volunteering going, or maybe we could
we actually do have a map.
ask for some advice on how to set up our own volunteering things if any of us are in a position to do that, or potentially raising awareness for it and getting them some donations. Like, this is a huge thing that we really need to be getting on with, I think, because I have heard of some truly incredible services that do incredible work.
We do actually have a map that we've been trying to fill in with different organizations and so on that help men. It's at rights.men, and it's kind of a work in progress, and the site's a bit beta at the moment. But
Is that open source? Can people add things themselves?
there's a form for you to add things.
Okay, so there's a form. Okay, right. Yeah, I mean, I can certainly try to help with that a little bit if I can. But then also, yeah, finding like good mental health resources for men. I know you mentioned some fantastic things to do with loneliness, to do with mailing the elderly back and forth, and lots of things like that. I think if we really were to signpost those services more, we could like genuinely have a real effect on people. That isn't just begging over and over again for the government to do something, or like whinging on some social media post about gynocentrism or something. Really help people.
That's very interesting that you say that, because that's exactly how feminists would do it. They'd whinge. But Thank you very much for offering to help with it.
Yeah.
I've just pinged you and our map guy. Rights.men is the guy who created the site, and he's looking for any number of volunteers who can help him with this.
Okay.
And
Would you
it's
be
a
open to
pretty major
having
project.
volunteers? Because it's just a form, isn't it? It's not like you could do anything malicious that would affect anything. Would you be open
Absolutely,
to
it
having...
gets approved.
Yeah, exactly. So would you be open to having volunteers from other places, like other servers, or?
Oh, sure. I mean,
Okay.
we do need something we really need on there is moderators to approve the content and
Right.
people to report bugs as well, because we do know there are a couple of bugs.
Okay.
Sometimes it'll redirect you to like a 505 error if you've already put the thing in. So try to search the name of the organization or the some details from it before you add something, because you can end
Yeah,
up
I'll see what I can do. We'll talk more about how to do it in practice in the future, I think.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I
No,
can
that's
let you in.
great. I think it's brilliant you've been doing that. Yeah, genuinely, I think that's quite impressive.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it's mostly been Rights.men's efforts on this front. He's been a workhorse with it. At the moment, he's trying to set up a service that will collate basically every men's rights news source into one stream that will basically ping you as much as you want it to ping you, and subscribe to different things. And yeah.
Because I've noticed there's a lot of MRAs who are very, obviously you get some people, right? But there's a lot of MRAs who are very intelligent, like and very well informed, and know a lot about something that's going on and what to do. So I think that if we were more organized, it would make us a lot more effective, I think.
Yeah, we really do want to set up some sort of central hub for our movement, because at the moment we're kind of flailing all over the place. I mean, Fred mentioned a lot of really good things that we could do, like protesting courthouses and things like that.
That was a great idea,
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that one in particular is a good one, I think.
Yeah, I think we kind of need a lot more organization to really do that sort of stuff, though, because you can protest your local courthouse, but when it gets to being across the other side of the country, you really need to be able to dispatch like a team or something who can go over there and camp out on the doorstep of this courthouse for as long as it takes.
Yeah.
It's and that sort of thing also requires funding a lot of the time. And we really want to be in a position where we can start something like the Bloodstained Men, who are an absolutely great men's rights organization.
Start what? Sorry, what was that?
The Bloodstained Men. If you want a group to cheer on every time you see them on Twitter, subscribe to the Bloodstained Men. And
do you want to link
do a
that
lot
in
of
the
good work.
chat? Because I can't quite make out what it's called. Bloodstained Men, was it? Was that BLOOD? Right, okay. Right. Bloodstained. Oh, I see, okay. Yeah, I'll look into that and see what that's about, definitely. But yeah, I think we've got a positive direction going.
Yeah.
Anyway, I've probably got to run, to be honest, but it's been, I wasn't expecting to jump into this today, but it's been good. It's been very interesting and informative, so thanks for that.
Well, thank you for talking, and thank you to everyone else who showed up. We're here every Friday, 5 p.m. UK time, so please do come back, and we'll see you next week then, and I'll shut the stream down. Good night, everyone.
All right, night, dude. Have a good one.
You too.